this week's drive, we make a move on a championship, see a changing of the guard, get fit enough for rallying, and see another title hope crumple. All this and more in this week's Drive. We start with NASCAR at the Dover Speedway in Delaware for 400 laps of the track they call the Monster Mile. 27-year-old Californian rookie Jimmie Johnson won here in June and was looking for a third win in his first year in NASCAR. Action came early. On lap 28, Jerry Nadeau bounced off the wall and into Ward Burton. Both cars thumped the infield wall and took no further part in the contest. 40 laps later, Todd Bodine and John Andretti made contact and brought down Jeff Gordon with them to end his race against the infield wall too. But it was a tough afternoon for one of Mike Skinner's pit crew. On lap 243, as Skinner entered the pits, he hit his own jackman, who rolled up onto the bonnet. He landed on the ground in front of the car, but was able to get up and do the job.
He got up, picked up the jack, and did the stop.
And that is a tough pit stall to get into.
Finally, Johnson took the lead for good on the 245th lap. Mark Martin closed to within a few car lengths, but was never able to get alongside. Johnson won and joined Richard Petty as the only drivers to win their first two races at Dover. Although he qualified only 19th, Johnson won the $3.9 million race by half a second from Martin. He averaged 120.8 miles per hour in a race slowed 6 times by caution flags over 37 laps. The penultimate round of the DTM series was at the historic Dutch Zandvoort circuit. Carl Wendlinger, Martin Tomzik and Michael Bartels tangled at the first corner, but Bartels was the only one who struck out and walked back. Christian Abt of the Abt Audi team led the race until he was passed by his teammate Matthias Ekstrom on lap 7. But their teammate, Laurent Alliot, was odds-on favourite for the title. A formation pit stop complicated the equation. Bernd Schneider was looking to keep his championship hopes alive as Abt, Alain Menu, Schneider and Uwe Alsen all pitted together. Alsen locks up and Aiello can't avoid contact. Much more serious, and he would have been out of the race. Ekstrom, a 24-year-old Swede, took his maiden DTM victory, 5.5 seconds ahead of Schneider's Mercedes, with another Mercedes man, Marcel Fassler, in third. Avoiding any further dramas, Aiello took a safe 6th to clinch the 2002 DTM title, thanks to a total of 62 points, 14 ahead of Schneider, and with the luxury of a round still remaining. Indianapolis, most famous of all American racetracks, recently hosted a Formula One Grand Prix and claimed another small milestone. American Sarah Fisher became the first woman to drive a Formula One car in 10 years, breaking into a sporting arena normally dominated by men. Fisher, who competes in the American Indy Racing League, had the opportunity to test a McLaren in the build-up to the United States Grand Prix. On Friday, the 21-year-old American drove the spare McLaren MP417, used as an additional car for regular drivers David Coulthard and Kimi Räikkönen. But first, she had to have a seat made in the time-honoured way, and that foam gets hot.
These cars are spectacular. They're unbelievable. They've got great power and braking. I didn't even come to the extent of what the car was capable of, and not used to such horsepower and braking is what it has. It's very similar to a World of Outlaw car, sprint car that I ran with the traction breaking loose. But it was an unbelievable opportunity.
Keep your foot in. The electronics take care of the clutch, everything. You just keep your foot down.
You don't have to think. You just...
No.
Fisher was the first woman to drive a Formula One car since Italian Giovanna Amati, who tried unsuccessfully to qualify for a race in 1992.
Racing in America has been my capital gain, and I enjoy racing in the Indy Racing League, and this is an opportunity to kind of put my name abroad a little bit.
She is the youngest and fastest woman ever to qualify for the Indy 500.
from a publicity point of view, it's great for Formula One to have the first female driver in a number of years come and drive the McLaren, and hopefully it'll stir up a bit of interest from the American market as well.
Fisher is in her third season in the Indy Racing League and became the first woman to qualify on pole in a US Open Wheel Championship when she set a track record of 221 miles an hour in Kentucky last month. Meanwhile, in Rodeo Drive in Los Angeles, Jaguar Racing was hosting Art and Performance, celebrating the fusion of fashion and arts with cocktails, auction, a dinner, and musical performances along the famous fashion district. Actress Lisa Kudrow was one of many celebrities present. The evening featured the live auction of a 2003 Jaguar XKR, and proceeds went to inner-city art programs. Jaguar drivers Eddie Irvine and Pedro Della Rosa were in the United States ahead of the Formula One event in Indianapolis and joined the well-heeled partygoers.
I'm racing for Jaguar Racing. I'm one of the drivers in Formula One.
I hope they can get it down in time for the race. Rachel Hunter gets close to Eddie Irvine, regarded as the most eligible bachelor in Formula One.
Eddie, 0 to hero in 3 races.
Eddie didn't seem too happy to be tagged 0 to hero in 3 races, but said what a change to make the Jaguar car so quick.
We've changed really everything. That's, you know, all the major parts of the car except for the tub have been changed. We've changed the front suspension, front uprights, rear suspension, rear uprights, the underbody of the car, the barge boards that are along the side of where the driver sits. We've changed the front wing, we've changed the rear wing, changed the dampers, we've changed nearly everything.
Would you change the tub if you got the chance?
Oh, we would change that as well. You know, we last winter we made a lot of mistakes, and this year we've been racing and testing and putting everything right that really should have been done last winter. So it's been a very tiring year for the engineers, that's for sure.
Irvine's third place at the Italian Grand Prix at Monza on September the 15th was Jaguar's first podium in nearly 18 months. Pedro spoke about the unusual Indy track.
Indy es un circuito muy especial porque sobre todo hacemos una parte del óvalo, del famoso óvalo, y hay un par de curvas que es complicado.
The track is very difficult, with at least 2 very fast banked curves that are the only ones still used on any track anywhere in the world in Grand Prix racing. The United States Grand Prix circuit is on the infield of the Indy Stadium, and it's an interesting and challenging circuit that I look forward to driving.
Y un poco, ya te digo, pues un poco no se corresponde realmente toda la zona del infield, que son curvas de primera velocidad muy lentas con lo bonito que es el óvalo, ¿no? Entonces espero que para próximos años lo mejoren todavía más.
For the record, Eddie was 10th and Pedro retired with a broken gearbox. Michael Schumacher's relentless domination of the 2002 Formula One season continued in the US Grand Prix, although he controversially lifted off, letting teammate Rubens Barrichello win by 1/100th of a second, or 7 centimetres. Schumacher often talks of the Ferrari team as a family, and here he is greeted by test driver Luca Badoer. The German Ferrari driver is piling up the records. He's already won the Drivers' Championship for a 3rd year in succession, and record equaling 5th. He's also won more races than anyone else in a single season or in total, and scored more points than anyone else in a single season. The Italian team's drivers have won all but 2 of this year's 16 races to date, and Schumacher has finished on the podium at every race. Looking ahead, Michael had this to say.
It's long straights and there is good overtaking opportunities, and that's probably plus different strategies give the impression that cars stay more close together. Maybe for whatever reason in the past there have been other reasons cars have actually more together than other times, but we have a few circuits that have sort of tendency and the character of having more overtaking opportunities.
Michael's often asked, having raised so many benchmarks, what still motivates him.
Many people ask me the same question, and I have only one answer, the race itself. I simply love to race, to fight, and each one is a new sort of challenge for me.
Having finished 1-2 in the US, if they can do it again at the season's finale in Japan, Ferrari's points total for the season will match that of all the other F1 teams combined. Another record. Rally teams are increasingly working with their drivers and co-drivers to keep them physically and mentally fit during each season. Big variations in weather, driving conditions and road surfaces are all designed to test the cars to the limits over the 14 rounds of the championship. But one of the hardest tasks, though, is keeping drivers and co-drivers fit, focused and alert between events. The Subaru World Rally Team is unique in that it employs a sports scientist in its human performance division. His job is to study the effects of climate and environment on the crews and devise training regimes for each individual to maximize performance throughout the season.
First and foremost, they have to be specifically individual for the driver, but they could range from predominantly cardiovascular training programs like cycling, running, cross-country skiing at certain times of the year. And they could also maybe focus on strength training programs, particularly to support the backs of the drivers. We do a lot of work on core training, which is essentially for the abdominals and also the lower back, which is very much a key feature for a rally driver. So they can be quite varied, and also include a certain amount of flexibility training as well. When you're sat in a car for that amount of time, your muscles can get very tight.
Crews usually have less than a month between rallies to keep in shape. Acclimatization programs are also essential, so teams go to particularly hot or cold rallies a week earlier for training in the conditions that they'll face during the rally. How does co-driver Phil Mills prepare for an event physically?
Yeah, well, it just as get as fit as you can, really. Each event has different demands on your body, from the minus 30 degrees we get in Sweden to the plus 45 degrees that we get in Kenya. There's all sorts of different sort of demands on your body. So that's what we try and base the training around, really. In Kenya also you've got high altitude, the air is very thin, and we change wheels in the middle of the stage there, for instance. Sometimes you have 2 wheel changes to do at high altitude. So we try and practice that and go to each event a few days beforehand, train in those conditions, and just get as fit as you can for those each individual event.
Teams deal with the heat of events like the Acropolis Rally in Greece with extra air vents, reflective glass, and stamina training in the days beforehand. It's common for drivers and co-drivers to lose around 600 cc's of fluids per hour, which can mean losing up to 10% of body weight during a rally. And once someone loses 10% in fluid, concentration, judgment and vision can be impaired. So it's hardly surprising Petter Solberg and Phil Mills can get through 12 litres of water during an event. Training isn't just for the competitors. The entire team is encouraged to sharpen their fitness. Service crews often have to perform miraculous repairs in tough conditions and in short periods. Being fit aids concentration and accuracy under stress. Petter puts a high value on physical fitness to give him an edge in competition.
Well, how fit you have to be? You are quite easy. You have 3 days flat out in very hot countries, in very cold countries, and very rough rallies. It takes so much energy of your body, and I think more fit you are, you know, the faster you can go, and you can keep your concentration so good.
Of course, cutting body weight improves the car's power-to-weight ratio too. Between event testing is as much about getting the crews rally fit as it is about developing the car. Here it's the heat and dust of Africa ahead of the Safari Rally in Kenya. Home base is this modern facility at Banbury in England. The work carried out by the Human Performance Division also helps the rally car designers and engineers. Measuring the forces applied to the driver and co-driver during a rally has helped develop the ergonomics and seat designs in the car, giving extra support where necessary, particularly to the lower back. The engineers have to give the driver complete control and maximum visibility, while the co-driver sits low to aid handling.
As part of the research program, we have to look quite carefully at the space we've got available within the car. And obviously we measure the drivers quite accurately. We assess them orthopedically to make sure that they can fit within this space and do the specific jobs that they've got to do. We want them to be comfortable, we want them to be safe, we want them to be able to perform maximally. So we take all these things into consideration when we are making sure they fit neatly within this space.
Norwegian driver Petter Solberg and British co-driver Phil Mills have proved to be a strong combination this year, and Petter has often outpaced 4 times world champion and teammate Tommy Mäkinen. Rallies amongst the stones of New Zealand, the dust of Australia and the mud of Britain will wrap up this year's season. Swedish rider Tony Ricketson clinched his 5th World Speedway title with victory at the Danish Grand Prix in Vojens, his 3rd win of the year. Ricketson goes into the 10th and last round in Sydney with the title settled, after the challenges of nearest rivals Jason Crump and Ryan Sullivan came to an end in Scandinavia. Australian Crump needed to beat Ricketson in the final, but crashed heavily after being outgated by the ice-cool Swede. Both Crump and Sullivan are Australians and were hoping for a hometown showdown on the first Australian round in a World Championship. The sport of speedway originated in Australia. Sullivan, riding with a broken collarbone suffered 2 weeks before, failed to qualify from the first semi-final after being beaten by Pole Tomasz Golob. Golob went on to take 2nd place behind Ricketson, with American rider Billy Hamill claiming 3rd spot. Watch again as Jason Crump's bike hooks up with too much grip, rears and spits him off, a victim of the rutted track. Ricketson won his first world final, the last one-day event on this same track in 1994. And now he's added the last Grand Prix to be staged at Vojens. In 2003, the Danish Grand Prix will move to the Parken Stadium in Copenhagen. Ricketson has now matched fellow Swede Ove Fundin's 5 titles and has Ivan Mauger's record 6 within his sights. The win gives him an unassailable 26-point lead in the championship. The 2nd, 3rd and 4th places are held by Australians, Sullivan, Crump and Lee Adams. What's unusual about this happy family scene? Not much. What is unusual is what Sandra Idopkaya does when she's at work. Sandra's not your average, ordinary sort of mother. During the day, she puts up with the rumbling of engines and the fussing of clients. Well-dressed, well-manicured, and up to her elbows in grease for most of the day, she has brought a touch of femininity to a male-dominated world, the garage. Sandra is the chief mechanic at a garage in Lagos. It's a city notorious for traffic jams, and many Nigerian cars have been kept alive way past their prime. So, for Sandra, there's no shortage of grateful and often mystified clients.
You know, it baffles me to see a Nigerian woman walking this way, you know. And I think she's quite better than a lot of Nigerian men in the same field.
There are very few female mechanics in Nigeria. So when Sandra finally gave in to her love for cars at 15 and started mechanical training, she had to deal with some criticism and taunting.
I At times when I'm leaving the workshop in the evening, coming back home, and I see little children, they'll just be walking around me and shouting, "Woman mechanic, hey, you are not ashamed of yourself, you are doing mechanic," that kind of stuff. You know, I was embarrassed.
Sandra didn't let anyone discourage her. After secondary school, she studied automotive engineering and later took up an apprenticeship.
In my school, I was the only one in my whole class. We were 34, 33 boys and 1 girl, and I was the only girl. So I can say I was one of the best. Talk about practical, talk about the technology, I was really good in it. It's not that I'm just saying it. It's a thing I really love, you know. I was very good.
The way she behaved, when she was learning this job, she was just too good. And she faced the job and she was serious. And today I think I'm proud of her.
Today, Sandra owns this garage and has employed 8 other mechanics. When it comes to repairing cars, Sandra means business. She's very hands-on and personally oversees all the jobs in her yard.
How much for brake lining?
She buys all the parts needed to fix her clients' cars herself and carefully weighs up what she buys. And she's come to realize that being a woman in a man's world does have its advantages.
They know since I'm a woman, I'll be honest more than the men, and that's the fact. But the boys can, you know, they can have this trick of one thing or the other for the customer to start fighting and all that. But I've not had that problem with any of my customers before.
Sandra puts in long hours working at her garage on top of being a mother and a wife. But somehow she still finds time for other things, making sure that her femininity is not lost in the grime of her day job.
I love fashion. You can see what I'm wearing my cowboy cap, and you know, if some people see me, they don't believe I'm a mechanic. I go to the salon, make my hair, still make up, still make my skin fine. I love this, man.
With her determination, Sandra has already become something of a role model to other Nigerian women. Miriam Nwenum, a banker, is full of admiration.
An auto mechanic, I mean, a woman venturing into it was virtually unheard of in the past. It used to be a male-dominated profession. Breaking into that, it's a breakthrough as far as I'm concerned.
Sandra has already trained 3 female mechanics, and she doesn't plan to stop there.
I really like, you know, to establish an association for female mechanics where I will be able to train a lot of women.
Sandra's one of a growing number of African women who aren't just sitting back and waiting for the doors to open.
Sun is free as well.
We'll end this week on that inspirational note. But so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.